I mean, that's endlessly cool, isn't it? It's so good. Right, let's stop it there. Historically, we've always started with Koenigsegg's closed, as it were, but we thought all of the intricacies and details are actually when you open these things up. So, welcome back to the bunker. It's been a while since we've shot in here. Finally, I've managed to persuade my business partner in the bunker group to lend us his Koenigsegg. If you follow the channel regularly, you may remember this making a feature when he first received it a few months back. And I sort of seeded some ideas in that video that I'd try and get us a first drive. And that's exactly why we're here today. So what we're going to do is give you a sort of brief overview of the details and specs and features of the car, because if you really want to get super detailed and nerdy on it, there's a link below to the video where we did, I think, a 25-minute walk and talk of the specs and features of the car. So if you want the super nerdy stuff, click the link and you'll see all about this. But today is about the first drive. However, it would be a disservice to not tell you a little bit about this car. So I actually had a hand in speccing this car. So it does have a small piece of my heart. And if I do say so myself, it's rather well configured. So it's amazing to see it here under our lights of the bunker. Now, the primary color is called sky blue, and you're probably looking at that thinking you've got that wrong, Jimbo. But it is actually called sky blue. My interpretation of sky blue is a bit lighter blue, but sure enough, that's what this is. There's three colors on this car. We've got orange tang, which is a triple layer pearlescent highlight accents in these pinstriping here. That's also on the brake calipers and central dart that runs down the exposed carbon fiber nose. And that's the other color, which is black, but actually everything black on the outside of this car is exposed carbon. And Koenigsegg, they have various different types of carbon. Koenigsegg have a proprietary carbon finish called KNC. That's Koenigsegg Naked Carbon, which is a polished carbon. So it doesn't have any lacquer, there's no clear coat. This is a raw carbon polished back, and it has this sort of metallic, sort of chromatic finish to it. Now, if you can see there, that's the difference between KNC, Koenigsegg Naked Carbon, and your typical gloss finish carbon with that now iconic signature chunky carbon fiber weave from Koenigsegg. So, engine, that's what it's all about. This is 1,500 brake horsepower. You heard that right? 1,500 brake horsepower. And it is run through a transmission called KDD. That's Koenigsegg Direct Drive. And it is, in fact, a single gear. This doesn't have a conventional gearbox, despite the fact that it has flappy paddles on the steering wheel, which would conventionally be used to change gear. We'll explain that shortly. This is a single gear. So you can think of it as a CVT type clutch that is in control of 1,500 brake horsepower, and that is a combination of the 5-litre turbocharged V8 petrol engine combined with a substantial EV drivetrain, which combines to make 1,500 horsepower. The car weighs little over 1,500 kilograms, so it's getting close to that unicorn power to weight ratio of 1:1. The car is classed as a mega car because it develops 1 megawatt of power. Very cool indeed. Speaking of works of art, this car has obviously been a phenomenal investment. They only made 80 of them. They were all sold out, and the prices in some circumstances have doubled. But if you think that hypercars are a good investment, they are nothing compared with the contemporary art world. Now, fun fact, the contemporary art world has outpaced the S&P 500 by, wait for it, 164% between 1995 and 2021. And you're probably thinking, well, that's all very nice and everything, but it's very difficult to get into a Koenigsegg, and equally as difficult to get into something like a Banksy, and that's exactly where Masterworks comes in. Masterworks.io has emerged as the only platform taking billionaire art collectors head on, and it lets you access their exclusive investments. Simply put, you can now invest in the very same art that they do by names like Banksy, Monet, Basquiat, and other iconic artists for just a fraction of the price that they pay. And getting started with Masterworks is super easy. Head to their website using the link in the description below. It takes just a few clicks. The team at Masterworks really knows what they're doing. In fact, when it comes to selling art, they returned 32% to their investors in 2020 and 31% in 2021. Now you may be thinking, well, who are these guys? Well, they are one of the largest art buyers in the world. It was founded by a top 100 art collector, and Masterworks are valued at $1 billion. So these guys didn't just start up last week. They've got a tried and true investment process, and take it from us, we don't just put anyone in front of you guys. We also do our research into them just as heavily as they research into their own art. Effectively the equivalent of buying stocks and shares in artwork. And I kind of relate this really to the world of cars, because unlike a lot of investments, these are tangible. You can, in theory, go and see these physical works of art. Just like you can enjoy cars, they're tangible, they're real, and it's something that you can enjoy. But Masterworks drops the barriers and gives you entry into a world that was so exclusive previously and with an incredible track record. It's really easy. Go on to their website using the link in the description below, create an account, browse the artworks, and you can own a fraction of these incredible masterpieces. Right, while we're on the topic of engine, we should probably spin it around so you can actually see it, and we'll introduce you to a proprietary suspension system that Koenigsegg have developed over the years called Triplex, which is this unique suspension setup here. So Triplex is designed to reduce squat at the rear end of the car, optimizing the contact patch of these Michelin tires. Now, fun fact, Michelin have been the exclusive tire partner of Koenigsegg since the very early days, and they have worked in collaboration to optimize the amount of traction that they can get out of the car. Now, on the topic of torque and applying it to the surface of whatever road you may find yourself on in a Regera, from the internal combustion engine, there are 1,250 Newton meters of torque. Bonkers in any language, but it doesn't stop there. Combined with the electric drivetrain part of the car, that adds an additional, wait for it, 900 Newton meters of torque, therefore having a combined output of over 2,000 Newton meters of torque. So if there was any component which was essential to keeping this thing on the tarmac, it's these tires. Combined with these Pilot Sport Cup 2s and the Triplex suspension, it's designed in a way to reduce squat, which means it optimizes the contact patch of the tire with the tarmac, keeping all 1,500 brake horsepower down on the road as often as it can. It's very trick, and it just so happens to look incredibly sexy. And while we're on the topic of tires, let's talk about what they are stuck to, which are incredible proprietary Aircore carbon fiber wheels. Now, these are a single piece. I've asked Christian plenty of times how they do it. He won't tell me, but these are hollow. So inside there, think about this. This is a single piece of carbon, so it's totally enclosed, but inside these spokes, it's hollow carbon fiber as a single piece. I don't know how they do it. The benefit of them is obviously weight saving and dramatic improvement in the unsprung mass of each wheel. Now that improves with handling, braking, steering feel, everything that is associated with the weight and mass of something that is going to spin very fast at over 250 miles an hour is really important. So wherever they can save weight is essential, but on the wheels this is somewhat of a game changer. And then behind these wheels is, furthermore, and this is super cool, Koenigsegg developed brakes. So they do a lot of their own brake development in-house, and take it from me, when you've got the power to weight ratio of this thing, you want to make sure it stops. Now, lots of carbon on this car would be a massive understatement. The majority of this car is carbon fiber. It's built around an entire carbon fiber tub. All of these, yes, really clamshells are all carbon fiber. You can pull this off in a single piece. It is a work of art. And again, underneath, KNC, Koenigsegg Naked Carbon, the intricacy, the beauty, the detail. Oddly for me, what often quantifies what a hypercar is quite often the details that you don't see. And that's what's so fantastic about KRA. That's Koenigsegg Robotized Auto Skin, which is what you just saw at the opening of this video, the sort of transformation, the exploding of these body panels opening up the internals of the car. And when you've got something like that, you wouldn't keep it in your garage with that closed if you could see this remarkable work of art. Now then, this here, this massive plinth of carbon is the carbon fiber air intake that feeds directly into the 5-litre V8. And this here, this is part of the EV drivetrain. And these, check out this, but this is actually cooling vanes for the hybrid system. Now, on that, if we come down here, this is one of my favorite features of the Regera. You'd be forgiven for thinking that is the exhaust. Now, in a way, it kind of is. That does draw out hot air from the electrical system. But the real exhausts that are outputting from the V8 are these here. So these clever little fishtail-like exhaust tips, these are developed in collaboration with Akrapovic, who have disguised them really as diffuser vanes on the back of the car. I think what's also quite nice is fishtail exhausts used to exist in pre-war cars, which is pretty cool, seeing something so cutting edge and so contemporary, giving a tip of the hat to cars gone by. Yeah. Okay, so weirdly, before I close this down, this whole carbon clamp here is kind of technically your fuel filler cap. Bear with me. Come and check this out. As if it wasn't crazy enough turning up to your petrol station in a Koenigsegg Regera as it is, in order to fill up this car, you have to activate the robotized auto skin, lift up this massive carbon panel to gain access to your fuel filler cap. How berserk is that? And suppose you were filling up at said petrol station, it was pouring down. You could quite neatly retract your custom Koenigsegg umbrella from within the depths of your carbon fiber tub. And say you couldn't see your fuel filler cap, you've got a nice bespoke torch in there, finished off with some nicely milled Koenigsegg logo. Now then, just before we spin it around and introduce you to the front, this has active aero. So this rear wing articulates depending on the driving conditions of which you have manipulated it into, and we shall share that with you with a beautiful 4K rear view when we head out and drive it shortly. However, what is quite tricky about this car, it's also featuring the optional Ghost Pack. Now this is something that Koenigsegg launched to enhance the aerodynamic properties of the Koenigsegg Regera. Koenigsegg say it enhances downforce by 20%, which when you've got a car that is capable of damn near 250 miles an hour, stability at that sort of speed is probably quite reassuring. Okay, so the front of this car, strangely, is actually about practicality, because Koenigseggs are iconic for being able to remove the roof and stow it away in the front here. This might be confused as a laptop bag, but it is actually a Koenigsegg Cleaning Kit, which has been included with this car. It's actually the first time I've seen this. Super nice. I would definitely store my MacBook in there once I'd been finished with it, because it's got this really cool Koenigsegg badge on it. Anyway, that to one side. This is designed to house your roof. Now, if you're really into this car and the super nitty-gritty details, link in the description below. You'll see me taking off the roof and all of the interior features. But one of the interesting things is this section here, you could classify this as a carbon fiber sink. You see, when the roof is on, there's this little pipe here which collects water and drains it away. The theory is when the roof's off, it's not raining, so you don't need your drainage sink. So the typical technique is pull out this pipe here, like so, tuck it away, and in goes your roof. And there's these small little Koenigsegg shields here, which help you line up the roof when it's in to let you know that it's seated properly. And this here, this is one of my favorite features. When you pull out this, first of all, there's a really gorgeous dish, once again, of Koenigsegg naked carbon. But in here, you've got one of the most beautifully engineered central locking wheel nut rings I've ever seen. I mean, if that's not the most satisfying fitment, I don't know what is. All right, let's close down this panel, which, by the way, is a double tap on whichever button aligns with the panel you want to close. Double tap for open, double tap for close, and now you can really see this color theme come into play. Now, the interior theme, which is probably appropriate to check out right now, is like an Hermes orange. The color that Koenigsegg have allocated to this orange is a volcano orange, and this really is the epitome of the ethos of this car. You see, Regeras and previous Koenigseggs have been pretty hardcore. They've been track focused, fast road driving focused, and they've been fairly hardcore. Whereas this is one of the most beautiful Grand Tourers you could possibly sit in. You would actually class this as a hyper GT. The soft, supple leather having that instantaneous massive torque available immediately under your right foot makes it an effortless drive. We can't talk about Koenigsegg without talking about the dihedral synchro helix doors, which have now become an iconic piece of engineering and actually ingenuity from Koenigsegg, because it actually keeps the profile of the door very close to the circumference of the car, meaning you can get in and out of some remarkably tight spaces, in fact even more so than you would do using a conventional car door. The way they articulate in and out of the body of the car keeps them super thin and super close to the outside edge, meaning you can park in areas that you wouldn't do in normal cars, which for a car so bonkers is bonkers. Everything in here is very different from the previous offering from Koenigsegg. Speaking of which, we should probably hop in and find out what that feels like. All right, so here we are. Good God, the torque is obnoxious. It's such an effortless machine, this. You can feel it. Under your right foot, there is a tangible ball of energy. It's unlike anything else, actually. You might have actually just noticed that I went to pull the downshift paddle there, that right paddle. Watch this. That should be illegal. That should be illegal. So the last time I drove a Regera on this circuit, it was wet. It was raining, and it was the depths of winter. And actually, it was a fantastic example of the technical ability of the car, because the traction control was actually from a different planet. The way it managed to keep all of this torque and 1,500 brake horsepower from spitting you out into that field was remarkable. The numbers, I just don't know. I just don't know how they do it. Well, I'll tell you how they do it. It's a 5-litre V8 hypercar with 1,500 horsepower packed into something that weighs just over 1,500 kilograms. So it's that very near to it super magic power to weight ratio of 1:1. It's not maybe quite there, but by God, the physics would suggest it is. I've never known anything like that. What's totally weird, this is the best way of describing how this thing feels. Imagine a Tesla or an EV with a 5-litre V8 in it, because it's got the massive immediacy and huge linear, relentless pull of an EV, but with the ferocity of a heavily turbocharged V8. It's a V8 powered hyper EV, effectively. It's so unique. Now, one of the things that makes it truly special and weird, I guess, in equal measure, is the up and down shift paddles here. Now, they're not for changing gear in the traditional sense, as we explained back in the bunker. This is a direct drive. It's a single gear. It doesn't have a conventional set of cogs. That's daft. You should have a pilot's license for this. That is absolutely ridiculous. The numbers. I've never been down that stretch of tarmac that fast with such little effort. And honestly, as good fun as this track is, it's not home for the Regera. I mean, it needs a runway, really, to even... It's sort of just about getting a lungful of air before I'm having to slam on the brakes. So the downshift paddle here, the conventional downshift, and the upshift paddle here are predominantly for putting it into various modes of drive. So when you're stationary and it's in neutral, you press the downshift paddle and it would put it into reverse. You press the upshift paddle. From reverse, it would go into neutral, and then an upshift paddle again, and it will go into drive. And there is KDD, Koenigsegg Direct Drive, sort of slingshot effect, where you could hold down the paddle and it will put it into this sort of lowest available drive mode. And it's just insane. Now, what's quite nice is that Koenigsegg have approached, I guess, the ethos of this car quite differently than they have done with basically every other car. So the Regeras, you know, they're much more hardcore. They're not perhaps quite as luxurious and refined inside. Even having an entirely different style of gearbox totally changes the way that that car feels. This, you can kind of think of this as a hyper GT, a mega Grand Tourer. I mean, it's beautiful. It's really luxurious. That effortless torque, and actually having no gears, makes it such an easy proposition to live with. I mean, for something to say cruise down to the south of the continent in, this thing would absolutely destroy miles. I mean, it's a phenomenal environment in which to sit. Don't forget as well, you can take off the roof, which in my eyes basically makes it 2 cars in 1. So it's a really special environment. And then what you can do is that. Good Lord. It's just an absolutely berserk. But I tell you something, as much as it takes your breath away under heavy acceleration, the overall experience with it is approachable. It's quite friendly. You would read this statistic on paper and go, 1,500 brake horsepower, best part of 1,500 kilograms. That must be terrifying. It's actually not. It's just a glee-inducingly fantastic feeling. And the most unique thing for me is that combination of the hybrid drivetrain together with that single gear, that the Koenigsegg direct drive. The immediacy of the throttle pickup is, that's where the EV meets the V8. It is a beautiful blend. I love it. What a machine. What a machine. Now, when we started this drive, I touched on the first time that I drove one of these in anger anyway, was on this track in the wet. And as phenomenal as the very advanced traction control system in that car was then, there's nothing like a dry, sticky tarmac for a little bit of that. I've got to put the brakes on. I've got to put the brakes on way earlier than anything I've ever driven down that stretch of tarmac. It's just amazing. What a machine. Now then, while we all like going fast, and while Koenigsegg is of course synonymous with world records, typically to do with speed, the important thing about this car is you can do this. Amble on in what feels like automatic mode, because of course you don't actually have any gears to change, and you've got that wonderful deep rich sound of the V8 combined with the effortless nature of the hybrid torque. It's a very, very unique proposition. I don't actually know what to compare this car with because it's so unique. I mean, what is there really that's like this? Nothing. And I think that's effectively it, isn't it? And that's why, I mean, from an investment point of view, look, all of the 80 cars which were allocated are now built, and the prices of these, if you were fortunate enough to get into one of these when it launched, your investment's better than gold. I mean, it's just incredible how these things just increase and hold their value. Importantly, I'm not sure of a brand where the value of the cars increases even with fairly decent mileage. And that is a wonderful thing that Koenigsegg somehow have managed to instill in their clients the joy of driving these cars. Don't make them garage queens. Get them out, use them. And because they're so special, so limited, so unique, not only do they hold their value, they're just going astronomical. Absolutely astronomical in value. This car would be, let's just say it would begin with a 4. Yeah. I think it doesn't need me to tell you that was predictably awesome. But you know what? As incredible as it is for what is effectively a hyper Grand Tourer out on a very tight, twisty track, I can't help but think this thing would completely transform the experience and come alive on a decent road trip. So comments below, where should we go? As always, thanks for watching. We shall see you next time. Ciao.